It happened on Christmas Eve, in the middle of a room filled with warm lights, polished silverware, and 22 people who had no idea they were about to witness the moment my entire world changed. My name is Emma Reed, and that night I learned how quickly respect can shatter, the same way a treasured object hits the floor and breaks. The dining room was glowing with soft gold light. The table was set with white porcelain, cloth napkins folded neatly, and candles flickering in quiet harmony. I had spent 3 days preparing that dinner. For me, it was more than a celebration. It was a chance to keep my family close, to hold on to the hope that things could still be repaired. My son Alex sat at my right. His wife Madison sat beside him, dressed in red silk, her smile sharp enough to cut through glass. I had tried for years to bond with her, to make space for her in my home and in my heart, but that night she made it painfully clear that I had been offering my kindness to the wrong person. After dessert, I handed Alex his gift, a small wooden box, polished and simple. Inside was the pocket watch that had belonged to 4 generations of Reed men. My grandfather carried it during the hardest years of his life. My late husband kept it in his coat pocket every day of our marriage. It was more than a watch, it was a legacy. Alex's eyes filled with emotion as he held it. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. "It is perfect." Then Madison reached for it. She turned the watch in her fingers, her face twisting with irritation. "This is it," she said. "A scratched old watch." Before anyone could react, she dropped it. The sound echoed across the table, a clean, sharp crack that silenced the entire room. The crystal shattered on the hardwood floor. No one moved, no one spoke. And Alex, my only son, sat frozen beside her. 38 seconds passed before he said anything, long enough for me to understand exactly how alone I truly was. That was the night everything broke, not just the watch but the last piece of patience I had left. Long before that Christmas night, long before Madison ever walked into our lives, the watch had been a symbol of everything my family stood for. To understand why its loss cut so deeply, you would need to know where it came from and what it meant. I grew up in a small town outside Nashville. My family did not have much, but we had grit. My grandfather, Henry Reed, ran a modest hardware shop with a stubborn kind of pride. He believed in working with your hands, in fixing what was broken, and in treating people with decency, even when it was not returned. When he turned 21, Henry's father gave him the pocket watch. He told him that a man's worth was measured not by the money he made, but by the integrity he carried. My grandfather wore that watch every day until he handed it to my husband, Daniel, the year we married. Daniel kept the same tradition. He carried it with him when we opened our first hardware store, when Alex was born, even during the long nights when we had barely enough money to keep the lights on. Before he passed, he placed the watch into my palm and said something I never forgot: "Protect the legacy, Em, and protect our boy." So I did. For more than 20 years, I ran the business alone. I woke up before sunrise, balanced inventory by hand, and rebuilt what life tried to take from us. Alex grew up in that store. He learned how to stack lumber, how to talk to customers, how to show up even when he was tired. We were a team in every sense of the word. Which is why it hurt so deeply to see how far we had drifted. The boy who once held my hand as we locked up the shop at night was now a man who could not look me in the eyes while his wife insulted everything his father and grandfather had built. That watch was never about its value, it was a reminder of where we came from. And on that night, when it cracked against the floor, something inside me cracked too. Madison Quinn entered our lives on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day you forget, until something unforgettable happens. Alex met her at a local business conference in Phoenix, where she introduced herself as a branding consultant for small companies. She had a firm handshake, a polished smile, and an online presence that sparkled brighter than any truth behind it. From the moment I shook her hand, something in my chest tightened. It was not jealousy. It was not fear of losing my son. It was instinct, the kind mothers learn to trust after years of raising children and watching people come and go. Madison looked at Alex the way a real estate agent looks at a house she wants to flip, calculating, appraising, already planning the remodel. At first, everything seemed harmless. She laughed at Alex's jokes, complimented his ambition, and pretended to take interest in our hardware stores. She would sit in my kitchen with a cup of tea, legs crossed, a perfect smile on her face, asking questions that sounded caring but pried a little too deeply. How much revenue do the stores make each quarter? Does Alex have access to all the accounts? Do you ever think about retiring early? I answered politely, but inside my guard grew taller by the week. Within 3 months, Alex was head over heels. Madison posted photos of their dates online, each one filtered to perfection. She called him her forever person, her better half, her future. Her captions were sweet, but her eyes never smiled in them. I tried to reason with Alex. You barely know her, I said. Love takes time. He shrugged it off. You worry too much, Mom. Madison understands me. She makes me feel seen. That sentence echoed in my mind, not because it was true, but because I knew exactly how it had been planted. Madison was smart, beautiful, charming when she needed to be, and beneath that charm was a quiet hunger I could not yet name. But soon enough she would make it clear. Not long after the wedding, the atmosphere in my home began to change. At first it was subtle, almost easy to dismiss. A comment here, a suggestion there. Then, like water seeping under a door, the shift became impossible to ignore. It started when Alex and Madison asked to stay with me just for a few months while they looked for a place of their own. I did not love the idea, but I opened my home. That is what mothers do. They make space. They adjust. They hope. Those few months stretched into a year, then another. Madison treated my house as if it were an outdated showroom waiting for her approval. She moved decorations, replaced throw pillows, and rearranged furniture without asking. One afternoon I came home to find the framed photo of my late husband and me taken on our 10th anniversary missing from the living room wall. Where is my picture? I asked. She gestured casually toward the hallway. I put it in your room. The living room should feel modern. Personal items make it look old. Old. That was the word she used often, as if it were an insult instead of a stage of life she would one day reach. Her mother, Donna, arrived next, suitcases in hand. No warning, no request. She claimed she had been evicted and needed a place to recover. Before I could finish processing her story, she had chosen the guest room and settled in like a long-term tenant. From that day on, both women acted as though my home belonged to them. They whispered whenever I walked into a room. They criticized my cooking, my clothes, even the way I folded laundry. Alex tried to ignore it, but slowly I watched him drift further from me, wrapped in the fog of their influence. The home I had built with love and memory became unrecognizable, a place where my presence felt like an intrusion, a place where I suddenly needed permission to exist. And for the first time I wondered just how much more I would lose before the truth finally came out. The turning point came on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. I was reviewing routine store invoices when something unusual caught my eye. A charge from a luxury boutique I had never heard of. At first I assumed it was a mistake, but then I found another charge. And another, each one larger than the last. Confusion became unease. Unease became dread. The company credit card that Alex used for vendor payments and travel expenses suddenly showed purchases from high-end restaurants, designer stores, and spa packages, none of which had anything to do with hardware, lumber, or tools. I waited until he came home. Alex, what are these charges? He barely looked up from his phone. Oh, those, Madison needed a few things. It is fine, Mom. We are married. What is mine is hers. I felt my stomach drop. Married or not, the company card was not his personal wallet. It was the lifeline of our family business. When I pressed further, Madison appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, voice dripping with annoyance. Why are you interrogating him? He bought gifts for his wife. That is normal. You make it sound like a crime. It is not about gifts, I said quietly. It is about boundaries. She laughed, a soft, dismissive sound. Boundaries. That is a funny word coming from someone who cannot cut the cord. Alex stiffened. Madison wrapped her arm around him as if shielding him from my concern. She is always judging me, Alex. She never wanted us here. The lie rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. That night, after they retreated upstairs, I sat alone at the dining table with my laptop and opened every account tied to the company. What I found turned my fear into cold, silent rage. Over the past 3 years, Madison had spent more than $1.7 million. Company vehicles, resort trips, designer jewelry, private spa clubs, and a wedding so extravagant it swallowed nearly a year of profits. And Alex had no idea. He thought they were sharing expenses. He thought Madison was managing their budget responsibly. But she had created a world made of illusions, funded by the business I had sacrificed my life building. that was the night I realized this was not simply a matter of personality or misunderstanding. It was exploitation. Calculated and deliberate. And it was only going to get worse. 2 weeks later, everything became unmistakably clear. It happened on a late Friday afternoon when I came home earlier than usual. I had closed a major wholesale contract and wanted to share the good news with Alex. I walked quietly through the hallway, expecting to find him in the kitchen. Instead, I heard Madison's voice. She was on a video call, speaker on full volume, her tone nothing like the sugary sweetness she used around Alex. "I swear I cannot take it anymore," she complained. "Living here is exhausting, but it is fine. A few more months and this whole place will be ours." My heart stumbled. Her friend asked, "What if she leaves everything to someone else?" Madison laughed, a sharp, confident sound. "She will not. Emma is predictable. She will give everything to Alex. And when he inherits, I inherit. That is how marriage works." I stood frozen in the hallway, gripping the wall to steady myself. My pulse hammered in my ears, but I forced myself to listen. "Alex does whatever I tell him," Madison continued. "He thinks he is protecting me. Please, I can manipulate him with 2 sentences." Everything inside me went still. This was no misunderstanding, no miscommunication, no harmless selfishness. This was a plan. A plan she had been crafting since the day she set foot in our home. Carefully, quietly, I stepped back down the hallway, out the door, and sat in my car. I played the recording I had captured on my phone, her voice echoing back at me. For the first time since she entered our lives, I saw her without illusions. And I understood exactly what I had to do. When Christmas Eve arrived, the house looked warm and peaceful from the outside. Lights glowed along the porch rail, the tree sparkled in the corner, and the dining table was set for 22 guests. But beneath all that beauty was a calm I had constructed with purpose. This was the night I would finally put an end to everything. Madison entered in a shimmering gold dress, her confidence as bright as the sequins on her sleeves. Donna followed, smiling as if she owned the place. Alex stayed close to them, unaware he was standing at the edge of a truth that would change his life. Dinner moved along smoothly. Laughter, small talk, clinking glasses. Madison posed for photos like she always did, positioning herself near the tree, then near the fireplace, then at the head of the table. Every shot carefully angled, every smile rehearsed. After dessert, I stood. "It is time for gifts." Madison clapped her hands, thrilled. I ignored her excitement and handed Alex a small wooden box. His face softened when he saw what was inside. "Mom, you restored it," he whispered. Before he could say more, Madison snatched the watch from his hands. "Let me see what has you so emotional." She turned it over once, twice, then sighed loudly. "It is the same old thing. I thought it would at least be worth something." Then she dropped it. The watch hit the hardwood floor with a crisp crack that sliced through the room. Gas rippled across the table. Donna covered a laugh with a napkin. Alex stared in shock, frozen again, just like before. This time I did not let the silence linger. "Since we are being honest tonight," I said, "I have a few things to share as well." I walked to the sideboard and picked up a thick folder. Inside were the printed financial statements, every charge she had made on the company account, highlighted and totaled. $1.7 million. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered under their breath. Then I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Madison's voice filled the dining room. Every word she had said, every plan, every manipulation, every lie. When the recording ended, the house felt impossibly still. Madison's face drained of color. Donna looked ready to faint. Alex stared at me, eyes wide, breathing uneven. I finally turned to Madison. "Your car is being repossessed tonight. The keys, please." A tow truck's headlights flashed through the window at that exact moment. And for the first time since she entered my life, Madison Quinn had nothing left to say. For a long moment no one in the room moved. Madison stood frozen beside the table, her fingers curled tightly around the back of a chair as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Donna stared at the floor, avoiding every set of eyes in the room. And Alex, my son, looked like a man watching the pieces of his life fall apart in slow motion. "Mom," he whispered, barely breathing, "is all of this true?" I nodded once. Every word. He swallowed hard, turning toward Madison. She would not look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the folder of financial statements, as if staring long enough might change the numbers printed on the page. Madison finally lifted her chin. "This is an attack," she snapped. "She planned this to embarrass me. She hates me. She always has." "This is not about hate," I said quietly. "It is about responsibility." Alex's voice cracked. "Did you really spend company money? Did you really say those things about my mother?" Madison opened her mouth, but no sound came. For the first time, she seemed unsure of her own words. Alex pressed a hand to his forehead. "All this time I thought Mom was being unfair. I thought you were the one being hurt. But it was all lies. All of it." Madison reached for him. "Alex, baby, listen." He stepped back so quickly she froze mid-sentence. "Do not call me that," he said, voice hollow. "Not right now." His face crumpled. "I let you come between us. I believed things that were never true. I treated my mother like she was the problem when she was the only one trying to protect me." I walked toward him slowly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You see clearly now. That is enough." Tears slipped down his cheeks, quiet and unsteady. "I am so sorry, Mom." Around us the guests shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to stay or slip away. But in that moment, nothing and no one mattered except the truth finally settling into place. My son had woken up. And once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. 3 days passed after the Christmas disaster, and in that short time Madison's perfect world began to crumble piece by piece. Influence, after all, is a fragile thing. It shines brightly online, but it shatters quickly when real life steps in. On the morning of the 3rd day, she showed up at my store. No makeup, no polished hair. Her coat wrinkled, her eyes swollen. She looked nothing like the woman who used to glide through my kitchen with a camera in hand. "Emma," she said, her voice shaking, "we need to talk." I set aside the inventory list in front of me. "About what?" "Everything is falling apart," she whispered. "I lost 2 brand deals. People are calling me a liar. My followers are turning against me. And Alex, he blocked my number." She paced the office, running her hands through her hair. "I do not know what to do. I need help." I watched her quietly, not with anger, not with satisfaction, simply with understanding. Life was finally showing her what accountability felt like. When she finally stopped pacing, she faced me with trembling lips. "Emma, please. I need you to talk to Alex. Tell him this is not who I really am. Tell him I can change." I asked her the question she had avoided for years. "Do you love my son, or do you love the life he gave you?" She froze, her mouth open but no words came out. "You treated love like a ladder, Madison," I said. "You climbed it, used it, expected it to hold your weight without giving anything back." She blinked rapidly as tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I know I messed up, but I do not know how to live without him." My voice softened, but my resolve did not. "Then you need to learn. You need to stand up on your own feet for the first time in your life. Because the version of comfort you built was not love. It was dependency dressed as glamour." She swallowed hard, her voice barely there. "Does he hate me?" "No," I replied. "He sees you clearly now. That is not hate, that is clarity." Her shoulders sank. She nodded, a small, broken movement. For once, she did not argue. And that was the first honest moment I had ever seen from her. The following week felt strangely quiet, as if the whole house was holding its breath. Alex stayed with me during that time, sleeping in the small room he used as a teenager. He barely spoke the first couple of days, moving through the house like someone trying to relearn how to breathe. On the 4th morning, he finally sat down at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "Mom," he said softly, "I think I know what I have to do." I waited. He stared at the table, his voice barely above a whisper. "I cannot stay married to someone who used me. Who used our business? Who used you? I cannot build a life with someone who only loved the comfort, not the commitment." The words seemed to drain the strength from his body, but at the same time I saw something new in his eyes. Resolve, maturity, a heartbreak that was leading him back to himself. He met with an attorney that same afternoon. The separation papers were straightforward. There were no children, no shared assets worth fighting over, nothing binding them together except a marriage built on illusions. When Madison received the notice, she called the store 9 times. Alex answered none of them. She showed up once, standing outside in the parking lot, shivering in the cold, pleading for him to talk. He stayed inside, watching from the office window, grief tightening his jaw. She finally left with her shoulders slumped, the wind tugging at her coat, like even the weather had grown tired of her dramas. A week later, he signed the final documents. Afterward, he came home, sat beside me on the sofa, and took a long breath. "I thought losing her would break me," he said quietly, "but I think what broke me was realizing how far I drifted from myself." "You are finding your way back," I told him. "That is the part that matters." He leaned his head back, eyes closed. "I want to rebuild my life, and I want to do it right this time." And in that quiet living room with winter light settling softly across the floor, I knew he would. The weeks that followed felt like watching winter melt into early spring. Nothing changed overnight, but every day brought a small sign of healing. Alex woke earlier. He cooked breakfast instead of skipping it. He started jogging again, the way he used to before his life became tangled in Madison's expectations. One morning he came into the kitchen wearing his old work shirt, the navy one with the faded store logo. "I want to go back," he said. "Not as a manager, not as the owner's son. I want to start where I should have started years ago. Stocking shelves, helping customers, earning my place back." The pride that filled my chest was quiet but strong. I nodded. "Then that is exactly what you will do." And he did. For the first time in years, Alex walked into the store with humility instead of assumptions. He swept floors, unloaded trucks, stacked merchandise, and asked questions instead of pretending he already knew the answers. The employees noticed. They respected the effort, the change in his tone, the way he listened instead of leading with ego. I watched from a distance at first. Then one afternoon I saw him laughing with a customer, genuinely laughing, and I realized he was not just rebuilding his job. He was rebuilding himself. At home we talked more, not about Madison or the past, but about the business, about life, about the future. Sometimes we sat outside on the porch, sipping tea in the cold evening air, letting silence speak for us. Sometimes healing does not come from big speeches, it comes from small consistencies. One evening he handed me a small velvet pouch. "Open it," he said. Inside were the repaired pieces of the pocket watch, the glass replaced, the chain polished, the hands moving again. "It looks exactly the same," I whispered. He smiled softly. "It will last another 4 generations if we take care of it." As I held it in my palm, warm from his hand, I knew the truth. Some things break so they can be rebuilt stronger, and some relationships are worth the work it takes to restore them. A full year passed before I fully understood how much life can change when truth is allowed to step in. The following Christmas arrived quietly, without extravagance or tension, without rehearsed smiles or hidden agendas. It was the first holiday in a long time that felt like home. The house was warm with simple decorations, pine branches on the mantel, a single strand of lights around the window. No gold sequin dresses, no staged photos, just peace, the kind of peace that settles in slowly, filling the spaces where chaos once lived. Alex arrived early carrying a plate of homemade rolls. He looked healthier, more grounded, more himself. Months of steady work and honest reflection had softened his shoulders and sharpened his focus. He was no longer a man trapped inside someone else's expectations. He had grown back into the man his father would have been proud of. During dinner, he reached into his coat pocket and placed a small wrapped box in front of me. "Open it," he said. Inside was the restored pocket watch, gleaming with new life. The engraving had been polished, the hands moving in steady rhythm. "I wanted you to have it back today," he said. "I think Dad would want it this way." I closed my hand around the watch, feeling the weight of every generation that had carried it. My grandfather, my husband, my son. The legacy was not just in the metal, it was in the resilience behind it. Later that night, as we stood by the window watching snow fall across the yard, Alex spoke quietly. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. "We all lose our way sometimes. What matters is finding the road back." He nodded, his breath fogging the glass. "I am ready for whatever comes next." And I believed him, because the past year had taught us something powerful. Families can break, hearts can crack, traditions can falter. But with truth, courage, and time, some legacies do more than survive. They shine brighter than before,